Welcome back for another OG show live. Mr. Randall, how you doing?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Reel Down.
Welcome back to another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs.
Hi, boys and girls. Welcome to once again the Bass Kayak Adventures.
Brother, this is the final cast.
Another segment of Chasing the Tide, your saltwater connection on the Paddlesports.
Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of Feather and Fur. Your host, Brad.
Welcome back to the Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Crystal.
Hey, welcome back to Off the Water.
Happy Susie Q here with Adventures of Outdoor Woman podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to the Rusty Hook Kayak Fishing Podcast.
We're brought to you by Pelican, built tough for all situations. Go to pelican.com. Eastport Marina on the beautiful shores of Dale Hollow Lake. For all your lodging, kayaking, go to eastport.info. Yak Gadget for all your fine kayak fishing accessory needs. Go to yakgadget.com.
Hello, everybody out there. This is Matt coming at you from the final cast with special guest Sean from Bass Fish with Noobs. How you doing, Sean?
Good, man. How about you?
Oh, man, I'm living the dream. I got off a little early today. Got into a nice 17-inch smallmouth and some riffles on the jerk bait, my favorite bait of all time. And it was awesome until I lost the bait, which, you know, it's just a Vision 110, so it's fine. It's not like it was expensive or anything.
Ouch.
Yeah, man. It's like the one bait that it hurts more than anything to lose. Because I can't find them anywhere, especially the juniors, unless I drive an hour and a half. Yeah, dude, they're like, I can't find them, and they're perfect for smallies. But of course, the one stupid tree that I couldn't see, because it only goes down like 2 foot. Mm-hmm. But of course, it was right there, and it was just far enough because I was bank fishing that I couldn't go in there, and I just saw a moccasin go underneath the wood piles there, so I wasn't going to try it. So yeah, it's just with the fishes now. But,
yeah.
It is what it is. It got me a fish. That was the first. I literally had that bait for a week. It got me one fish, gone. So, whatever.
Well, I have a couple of world minnows that I haven't even thrown yet, if that makes you feel any better. They're just expensive sitting in my tackle box, you know?
Yeah, well, dude, I've got Citizens that I was super pumped and I pre-ordered not pre-ordered, but got the order, and they're still in the package. Like they haven't even seen water yet.
That's how mine are. Yeah.
Like if I could move the camera, if you see everything on this table right here, including the reels that are sitting that don't have a home and I haven't used them in like 8 months, like people would be upset, be like, yeah, you have all this crap, you don't even use it. Yeah, I have a problem, everyone. We've discussed this and we understand it. So, but Sean, how's everything been going for you?
Going pretty good. I've had a busy week. I recorded with John Rapp just a little bit ago, a little bit on his show talking about fishing for river smallies on the Susquehanna, so that was fun. And
the promised land.
Oh yeah,
the river promised land. It always make me. I say all the time to Brad, I'm like, every time you post something, I was like, it's not even fair. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, he's catching all these smallmouth. It's because he's on the Susky. Like that's just not fair. Like, why can't I live there? No. So yeah. But
man, if it makes you feel any better, I'm jealous of you guys that you get to fish with other people. I'm like, I wish I had people that live closer to me, you know, because I fish by myself 90% of the time. There's a few people that I go out with, but I'm always envious when I hear you guys talking about going out together. And so,
yeah, that is the plus about it. I don't know. One of us is bad luck because when we go out, we've just been catching nothing but dinks. So, but. Brad finally got a good one on Saturday, so I can finally stop listening to him complain about it. But you know, we'll see. Hopefully, we're going to the White River in Indiana this coming Thursday, so hopefully we get some goodies. We'll see though. But we've got a really good show. I know you were super pumped when I asked you to co-host with this for me. We're bringing in a bait company that I've known about. You've been using them for a while, but I've known about and just started using about a month ago. And I can tell you, I am nothing but hooked, for a lack of a better phrase that is too fishing related and it's a pun, but I am. And that's Nikko Baits. So we have Scott Barrett, which is the North American market director, and we have the creek crawler himself, Nico Pro Staff Bryan Slanton. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Oh, pretty good.
Doing great, man.
Fun.
Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right. So for the people at home, we'll start with you, Scott. Let them know who you are, things along those lines.
Okay. So my name's Scott. I grew up in Virginia. That's where I live now. I actually grew up on a prison farm. And so I had access to all of probably about 3,000 acres. So I spent my childhood hunting, fishing, trapping. And I did a lot of conservation work when I was young too. Anyway, after some school and some grad school, I ended up in Japan and spent 20 years there. And while I was in Japan around 2010, I happened to be at a nanotechnology expo. And as I was walking through, I saw a booth of guys with fishing stuff. And that was Nico. So I was, you wouldn't think of associate nanotechnology with fishing, but there they were. And if you've used their product, you can tell it's a pretty good product. And, nanotechnology was part of that in the early days. And I saw what they were doing. I loved their whole mindset, their approach, what their philosophy, high quality, everything about them was just really impressed me. So I started helping them a little bit on the side while I was in Japan, trying to find them some worldwide customers and do a little bit of market research. Because at that time, they hadn't even released their first bait yet. And so they released their first bait in 2011. And it was right around in 2011 that if you guys remember that big giant earthquake and tsunami in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was in that. And that kind of
that was terrifying.
Yeah, that was pretty scary.
I was in the Marine Corps at that point, and I had a buddy who was in Japan, and I emailed him. I was like, "Hey, man, sounds pretty terrifying over there. Don't die."
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he didn't, so it's okay.
Yeah, it was quite scary. We're in the second largest earthquake ever recorded, and to see skyscrapers just wobbling like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, man.
And me at the bottom of those.
Yeah. Where do you even run at that point,
There's no way to go. You're surrounded by skyscrapers that are swaying. I mean, those skyscrapers are swaying probably at the top's probably 100 feet.
Oh, my God.
I mean, you could you could literally see skyscrapers in the distance go like this, pass each other.
Oh, wow.
After all that turmoil, I decided it was time to come back to the U.S. and so I brought my family back and started working with Nico. And at the time, we had just released the very first products. I really didn't have anything for the U.S. market, but I loved the product and really struggled for a long time to find my way. I had never worked in the fishing industry, and I thought it would be easier than it was. It's quite a challenging industry.
I can definitely attest to that. As someone I've worked with a couple small companies that are no longer in business. And after the first one, I told the last guy who did hand painted crankbaits and other hard baits and then some plastics. I was like, this is one of the hardest businesses ever to get in. And he'd always ask, well, why is that? I was like, 2 reasons. 1, the market is saturated. B, people have been using their same things that their grandpas used and their dads used.
Right.
And they're not very willing to change unless you can prove you have a better product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I came back to the U.S., brought my family, started working, trying to find ways to sell the baits. And I was only working with what I had. And again, I could go on the Shenandoah River in Virginia and I would catch tons of smallmouth on the shrimp, the tadpole, and the octopus, and probably more than I ever did growing up fishing that river. But people won't listen to you. They won't buy an octopus or a shrimp or a tadpole. And so you really struggle with sales. And finally, you just, even though they catch fish, people, you couldn't get people to try them. And that was a real struggle. And so we came up with the Hellgrammite. And
good job.
Yeah, that was the Hellgrammite still, is still what puts us on the map. And So we've developed a few baits since then, and we're slowly, getting along and moving forward. But it's been tough. Nico's a small company, and it's although I do have I have some people that help me, but it's it's a quite a lot is on my desk all the time, and
I can imagine.
It's a slow but steady process, and but at Nico we're very dedicated to making a good product and doing the right thing, and it's a higher priced product, but we're confident that the value will eventually be known by a wider audience, and that's what I'm here for.
For sure, I'm about it, and we'll get into the price a little bit because I think you explained it to me because we talked a little bit before the show, and we'll get into that a little bit later of why it's worth it. But I'm going to go, Bryan, introduce yourself. I can tell you, Scott, one of your number one salesmen is probably the creek caller himself, because I tried Nico, and I'm not a set in my ways type of guy. The second I saw it was made in Japan, I automatically was like, my foot's in the door now, because as Sean knows, I'm the JDM Lord in our our group. So second I saw that, but man, I mean, you can't go through a creek crawler video on YouTube without seeing a Nikko bait put in either ridiculous amount of work or catch fish when everyone else is struggling to catch fish. So Bryan, introduce yourself. Let the people at home who don't know who you are, and how you got started with Nikko.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Bryan Slanton. Some of you who are watching or listening may know me as the Creek Crawler on YouTube. Grew up Southwest Ohio, huge into fishing, wade fishing, creek fishing in particular, mainly going after smallmouth, but I'm a multi-species guy, as most river anglers, I think, can attest to. Brad catches all the channel catfish for everyone. And
every single channel catfish in a vicinity or radius of Brad Hicks will be caught on something it's not supposed to be caught on. I've watched this dude catch more catfish on a jackhammer than I have people who actually fish for catfish. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, man, I grew up in Southwest Ohio, fished the Great Miami River and all its tributaries, and found this Hellgrammite a few years ago. But a little bit of backstory on me. I also served in the military. I was in the U.S. Navy. I lived in Japan for 4 years. So the tackle shops in Japan are unbelievable, to say the least.
Oh my God, yes, they're amazing.
Just the variety, the innovation, and the quality of work that they do over there is just incredible. And when I came back home from the Navy, I was like, you know what, I'm going to step up my YouTube game, start recording some videos. And then like 2017, 2018, I started putting a lot of work in. And I was like, I'm looking for something different, because I was really basic. I've kind of grown as an angler these past few years, expanded my horizons and techniques and tactics. But I was like, I need something that these smallmouth just haven't really seen before in Ohio. And I did some research, found this Nikko Hellgrammite. I was like, wow, this is... And as a fish management and wildlife student, I was like, this makes total sense. And not many people are throwing artificial Hellgrammites. Yeah, the Hellgrammite is known to catch the smallmouth live Hellgrammites. I was like, where's the artificial one? And I found Nikko's Hellgrammite and fell completely head over heels for it, because I would go out and literally just use a single bait all day and catch 20 plus smallmouth on the same bait. I was like, this is just unreal. And I was like, I have to start making videos of this, because nobody's going to believe me that these things are just so effective. So I just started making videos, and yeah, it might get old on the YouTube channel seeing me throw the Hellgrammite all the time, but it's just a proven killer. The leech is a killer. We'll get into the Nikko baits later on, the different presentations. But yeah, I came from Japan. I've experienced the earthquakes, and I even felt them on the ship. On a giant Navy vessel out in the middle of the Pacific, you can feel these earthquakes. And I was just like, this place is crazy. I took my wife over there. She lived over there with me the last 2 years of my contract there. And we were like, yeah, our apartment's shaking. So let's go back home when we're done with this. But yeah, man, been home, been videoing, doing the YouTube thing the past few years pretty hard, as I'm a student at Ohio University and working as well. So I've been pretty busy, but that's where I am today. So.
It's awesome. And one thing I'll say before we dive into Nikko, this is your first full season in a kayak, correct, Bryan?
This is my first full season in a kayak, yes.
If you had one tip for new kayak anglers, what would it be?
A new tip for kayak anglers.
Brand new, like they've never
Brand
kayak fished
new,
before. They
putting
want to
their
get
foot
into
on
it
the-
like you
on
did.
plastic. Be safe, man. I've found myself in some situations that if I was an experienced kayak angler, I probably would never, like, learning how to read the water on a kayak, especially on a river system, being prepared and doing a lot of research before you do a float, because I've taken on some floats that I wasn't familiar with in dark situations, and it was like really dangerous, and I've been on the edge of like flipping my kayak. I'm not even gonna say it, but I haven't made a mistake yet.
Yeah, exactly.
I got wood right here. But I've been in situations where I needed to not be so fast about it. I need to go there, do the footwork before I go. Like, go wade the stretch. Look where the obstructions are, the strainers that could tip you over if you're not being careful. And just reading the water, especially in the river.
Yeah, I can 100% attest to that. As people who listen to the show know, me and Brad are stupid. We've been doing this for a while, and we still do dumb things. So don't do what we do. Listen to Bryan, because that is one of the best tips that I could ever give anybody. Be safe when you go out there. Pay attention. The river is an ever-changing thing. It could look fine until you hit a rock going sideways, Brad, and tip your boat.
Water
and you lose all your crap.
Yeah,
it really
water
is, especially
so much powerful than you think it is. Even in just a few inches of water, 5 or 6 inches, and you go sideways, it has the force to push you over. And it can. I've been in some scary situations this year.
Yep.
I was going to add the force of water, because I used to be a whitewater kayaker and canoer, and you really don't. People don't appreciate the power of flowing water until
they don't respect it, right?
Until you're in it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I was about to say, there was a video posted in the Bonafide owners group, and it was a guy taking an SS107 down some class 3s. And I commented, I was like, dude, that's really cool that I know it can do that. I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm happy it can. I've been doing this for a couple years now. I know Brad's been doing it for way longer than I have, at least double the time. And I mean, we've gone down some sketchy stretches where we probably shouldn't have, and we should have looked at it a little bit better. But man, that was like, watching that video gave me anxiety.
Yeah.
Because you're on a sit on top kayak where your center of gravity is super high. And the dude's just going right through like it was nothing. I was like, dude, that's awesome. That's stupid though. I'm not going to do that. So
I made that mistake fishing the Hobie BOS on the Susquehanna. I fished the Juniata River, and I've never been on there before. And I was coming back from my practice, and I hit, like, I was looking forward, and I was like going pretty fast. I was like, okay, I don't remember this, but like I could see past the boulder, and the water wasn't connecting there. And I was like, it was too late. And I hit this boulder, and the water pushed me sideways. And I was like leaning over like these large like stone pillars are in it's a pretty unique ecosystem. But I was like leaning over, and I don't know how it didn't happen, but I didn't tip. My kayak kicked the bottom, and I kind of like pushed myself off the rock. And it was a crazy situation.
It's sketchy. I mean, it's like the whole day changes immediately for 20 seconds while and it seems like you're there for 2 hours, like trying to figure out like 2 weeks ago I was out and I got stuck on a rock, and I positioned myself. I lucked out in the P127, got a rock up in between my rockers so I wouldn't move. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to keep fishing and assume everything's going to be okay. And Brad goes by me. He's like, you good? I was like, I can't move, man, but I'll be fine. And then I finally was like, well, Bending Branches paddle, Angler Pro, $300. I'm going to break you today. And just push myself off, gouge my paddle. I was butthurt. But okay. So everyone's used to the rabbit holes, but we're going down a deep one now. So we're going to get into Nikko Baits. Scott, as the main Nico guy, where do you want to start?
Oh wow. I guess we'll start with just maybe a second or two on the company, and then the plastic, because what makes that unique, and then you'll see how it performs in the baits.
It works great. I'm about it.
Hey, well, first of all, Nico has a history of about 50 or 60 years in business. They're a small company in the Tokyo area, and they are periodically ranked in the top 50 of Japan, I think, as far as a small company to work for. And
oh wow, that's awesome.
So the company's name actually means daily happiness. And
That's
so
cool.
the company's
I did know that.
philosophy is that you have to bring value and happiness to people, and by people recognizing that, they'll buy your product or service, and you'll make the world a better place. And so Nico's worked with plastics for 50 or 60 years, and this particular plastic that they use, they've worked with for about 50 or 60 years.
Wow.
In around 20 years ago, around 2000, they started looking at ways to make a more environmentally friendly soft plastic and using their plastics. And because at the time, the typical baits, the plastisol baits that most people will use contain, well, the plastisol acts as an environmental hormone. It disrupts all of the communication within your body. It causes all kinds of issues, mental cognizance issues. It causes high blood pressure. It causes, at a high enough level, it will cause gender dysphoria. It causes lack of development, especially for men and boys.
I'm getting a lecture. I didn't know any of this. Like,
yeah,
I knew it wasn't great, but I didn't know it. Like,
if you burn it, you get dioxin. You can't recycle it. And so the plastisol baits, they're sporadically banned in various watersheds around the world, and they're banned in some watersheds in Japan. And that was the impetus for the proposal in Maine to ban soft plastics in fishing probably about 7 or 8 years ago. It was because of these toxins. So Nico's plastic is a medical food grade plastic. It is completely harmless. You could eat it, you could smoke it, you could do anything with it, and it's not going to cause any harm to anything at any time.
I'm going to eat a bait.
Yeah. Well, you may choke on it. So
I was going to say,
don't eat it, but not guaranteed against choking. But so even the scents and the colors in there, the dyes are also food grade material. These baits will also, they're made out of a polymer, a plastic that microbes will break down over time, and also UV will break them down over time. And when they break down, they don't break down into microplastics. They break down into like ammonia, carbon dioxide, and water. So they truly do break down. It just takes a long time, but they do harmlessly break down. And while they're in the environment, we've all seen fish that have swollen or hard soft plastics that they've ingested. A Nico plastic will never become hard. It will always remain soft. And so animals that ingest them can either disgorge them or pass them, or if it doesn't pass one way or the other, it remains soft within the animal. And in case of a fish, if it's not, it remains soft so the fish can still swim and still catch prey, can still escape predators. So it's a swallow safe plastic. So that's one reason why we call it, right behind me, the next generation of soft baits. Because Nico was really a pioneer in this, and it took him a long time. And this plastic is made at a level. It's a very difficult, very finicky, high-tech plastic to work with. And if you've handled Nico products, you'll probably realize that they do feel different. They perform differently. And that's why Nico is the private label manufacturer for some very, very large, well-known companies. Oh,
wow.
If you think of name two big giant Japanese companies, and there two of them. And then there's two more here in the U.S. that do very well. I'm normally not allowed to mention them to too much detail, but those companies can go anywhere in the world for their product. But these are very well-known companies. They trust their brand. Their brand is entrusted to Nico because Nico does perform at a different level. So that's the history of Nico. So Nico, released their first baits, I think, in 2010 in Japan, about a year before the earthquake hit. And since then, since 2011, I came to the U.S. I really didn't know anything about the fishing industry. My first interaction with the fishing industry was very negative. I had a lot of people steer me in the wrong direction, down dead ends, and try to prevent a another company from coming in. So I just kind of withdrew for a while. I just kind of like a turtle. You pulled my head back in under the shell, and I just decided to start locally. So I just kind of helped some guys with some local bass tournaments, and I went to Trout Unlimited shows because we have little bug baits too. We had those at the time. In fact, our stonefly was the very first bait we ever had. And the trout guys were really enthusiastic about the environmental aspects of the baits, and they're pretty smart fellows, and they gave me a lot of advice and helped me move on to the next step, and that was the Hellgrammite. And then that kind of really got us going.
So I have a quick question just to go off what you just said. What did Nico, because you said they've been around for about 50 years, what business did they start in before they got into the fishing industry?
So they were in the original business a long time ago. They made a lot of specialty packaging materials because they're a small company. They would make say back in the 60s, Japan was still exporting electronics a lot. And so when you package a lot of electronics, you need, little, precise, detailed pieces of plastic. And then sometimes the plastic needs to be a certain kind of plastic. And so that's how Nico got started. And now they do several things. They have a cosmetics line where they do private label cosmetics. They even make little tiny lineal motors for, I think they assemble them for like hobbyists. That's little spray painting. Like when.
Oh, that's cool.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
They actually sell paint that for the hobbyists that paint their lures. And they do a couple other things. There's anything that's kind of niche, kind of like a little bit of niche, a little bit of know-how, something that takes a little bit of an eye. I know they have a couple of healthcare products, but the soft bait business has become one of their main pillars, and they've clearly, I think in my mind, and I think in a lot of people's mind, they've excelled at that like nobody else. And
yes, I agree.
That's one thing that they continually are always trying to find.
For sure. So we can get in. So we got the history. I think we should get right into the Hellgrammite because that's I think your most known bait.
Yes.
We'll get into the history a little bit, and then I haven't thrown the Hellgrammite yet, so I'm going to completely take myself out of the equation, and I want to get Sean's way he rigs it, and then I want to, because I saw a picture on your website, somebody's wacky rigging it, so I want to figure out if somebody's done that, and if they have, explain it. And then I want to see how Bryan rigs it. So let's get on the Hellgrammite. That, like you said, that was your kind of your big, not necessarily big break, but the one that everyone's known about here in the U.S. So let's talk about that a little bit.
All right. Who do you guys want to go to, me or?
Oh yeah, you know more about the history of it than.
Oh well, the history of it was basically the Trout Unlimited guys said, "Hey, you know what? No one's ever made a good Hellgrammite. You should do that with this material." And sure enough, I grew up fishing, and there were plastic Hellgrammites when I was young. In the 70s, we had plastic Hellgrammite. And so I went and looked at the market again, and I realized, they're right. I didn't really see anything that really turned me on to a plastic Hellgrammite. So we decided to make one that would be number one in its category. And yep, there it is. So the Hellgrammite, there you go. It's people don't realize there's actually two species of Hellgrammites in the East. There's a separate species out in Texas, and there's one in California in the Sierras. Japan's got them, and Europe's got them as well. And
okay, I didn't know that.
So this Hellgrammite is kind of about 90% the normal Eastern Dobson fly that everybody knows, and I took about 10% from the lesser known Hellgrammite and just kind of tweaked it a little bit. And so it's a 3-inch bait, and you can see it there. It's pretty detailed. It's it floats. It's super durable, and it does the job. So there's almost, for rigging and fishing, this sounds kind of weird to say it, but there's almost no wrong way to fish it. There's almost no wrong way to rig it. It's a bait that just gets fish on, and fish find it. Fish will just find it. I personally Texas rig it most of the time. I used to. I think most of my customers probably Ned rig it, but I Texas rig it where I fish. Number one, I've been very unhappy with the Ned rigs that were on the market, certainly in the early days. This bait will outlast many Ned rigs, and certainly in the early days, the cheaper ones, even by the name brand. So I got very frustrated with that, and what I do is I just Texas rig it with a Gamakatsu G-Lock hook, 1/0. It's I think it's a very harmonious fit for this bait. And I can use it, almost the same way. I mean, it floats, it doesn't get snagged as much, and it's very versatile. And if you use Nikko Baits, because I'm using them all the time, I can take so. That. Yeah. Well, I do play around with other people's stuff sometimes. But I can take that Hellgrammite off and put on a leech. I can put on an octopus. I can put on a shrimp. I can put on squid strips. I could put on other bait, the tadpoles. All of those on the same rig, and so I don't have to spend time retying, and I can get a lot more fishing time in. It's a lot more fun, and it's I want customers to realize that too. If they there's these baits are pretty interchangeably as far as rigging, but that's kind of the basic style. A lot of people will get more fancy. I'll put them on jig heads, and lately I've been fishing top water a lot. So, where I'm fishing in the Shenandoah, the water's clear, it's low, it's got a lot of grass in it, and you can't drag stuff underwater very much without getting grass all over it. So, I just throw top water and just been killing it lately with that. Several of the baits I'll fish top water, but the Hellgrammite, really, really shines.
Yeah, see, I would have never even thought to rig that for a top water lure.
Oh, yeah.
Super effective.
Yep.
They're not shy about wanting that Hellgrammite.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. I mean, I've got a couple packs of them, and just looking at them, like they just look. It's very pleasing to the eye because there's a ton of detail in them. They're just like it's a super plastic, so you can tell they're super durable. Me and Brad were talking when we really put knuckles to the ground, started using them Saturday, and that's all we used. And he made the comment of in your hand, because obviously, I mean, we've had other elastoplastics or super plastic companies on here, and we've used their baits, but in the hand it feels like a heavier, thicker, like it's just a more, I don't want to necessarily say superior, but I mean, it just feels like a better version of what's out because it just feels better. It feels more durable.
There's a reason for that. So elastomer type plastics, there's a lot of varieties out there. I think most people probably start with the same base plastic as Nikko. But the thing is, with elastomers, it's very difficult to get all the properties that you want. There's like a sweet spot. It's like a golf glove or a baseball bat. There's a sweet spot in there, and it's very difficult to manufacture. And so every time you do something, every time you make a change, a lot of times you'll lose something else. And if you go in one direction here, you'll lose something over here. And really nobody except Nikko has been able to maintain this high level, this finicky plastic, and maintain its properties like that. So it's a pure product. It's I mean, it has stuff in it, but it's a more pure product, unadulterated.
The word pure explains it perfect because it feels like it's just exactly what it's, how you see all the advertisements and you see everyone who catches all these fish on, 47 fish on the same bait. But when you have this in your hand, it feels pure as the greatest adjective I could think of.
Yeah.
Because it feels like that. It feels like this is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And to do all those things, it's not cheap. It's not easy. And it also puts limits on your equipment, your machinery that you use. And So there's cheaper elastomers out there, but they've all made compromises one way or another to get the price down. You'll lose something, and it may be a good trade-off, may not be. But Nico decided to remain the pure. I guess if you're cars, the Lexus, I guess, of the group. But yeah, that's kind of why it's a little bit different.
Oh, for sure. So, Brian, we'll start with you because I know the reason that I'm going to start rigging the Hellgrammites is because of videos. Because you seem like you rig them the same way almost every time, and they never get snagged, and you catch fish on them. So, explain how you rig it for the people at home.
Yeah.
And what you use and what jig head you use. Because I had to go to 3 Dick's Sporting Goods to freaking find them. So.
Yeah, so this is my basic presentation right here. Let me get on the screen. It's a weedless presentation. This jig head right here is the VMC Rugby jig head. This is a heavier one, but this is what it looks like, Rugby jig head. And I've kind of narrowed because I've been using these for about 3 years now. And I've kind of narrowed it down through trial and error because, as Scott mentioned, these baits, they do have a price to them, but they're going to last forever if you rig them properly. I think you were rigging them just with a standard jig head. Was that right, Matt? How you guys are rigging the leeches?
For the leeches, we were throwing them on just a Ned head. So the hook was exposed, and we were just doing a standard Ned, which worked, but Brad did lose one because it's a Ned head with an exposed hook. And that's what you asked me when we started talking about doing Nico for the show. You said, hey, did you lose any? And I was like, I mean, I got it snagged, but I've learned to get Ned heads unsnagged. And that's a privilege we have as kayak anglers, is going out. Someone fishing from the bank necessarily, if they're fishing and they don't want to lose their baits, I've come to this, just a little weedless presentation. I get good hook sets. There's a huge gap in between there, so that when that fish bites it, you got all that hook exposed right there. And this is just what I've come on, just these little football heads. I like to fish rocky structure, so these little football heads bounce around perfectly for that, and you're able to drift these through riffles and stuff like that. And that's one of my most effective ways, is casting it up a riffle and letting it drift down into the deeper holes. And that's what I've rigged them on. That's what I rig all my plastics on. I even have the Nico Ned here on the same Rugby jig head. And that's a cool, awesome presentation too. This is the Lunar Ned. It's like a core shot. It's got like a blue and glitter in the middle, and it's got like a clear. That's dope. So now I need to get some of those because that looks sick.
Hey, and by the way, I'm getting Vance Outdoors to bring these to Ohio. So.
Well, there you go. So that's where I bought mine. If you're in the Ohio area, Vance Outdoors, if there's one near you, they had a whole section of them.
Hebron, Obetz, and Lebanon will be the stores that carry most of the Nico products that I've got here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I went to Lebanon. I got mine. And normally, me and Brad like to not dip into techniques too hard because that would be taking away from Sean.
Oh, good,
because
man.
He's the technique show. But since he's here, I'm going to cheat and we're going to do it. So before we get to Sean, because you throw a lot of guys like myself, I hate throwing a Ned rig on an EWG because I use a medium light, and I'm afraid I'm not going to have the backbone. And if I do have the backbone, I'm going to break it, which I forgot what rod I'm throwing half the time, and I end up setting the hook like I'm Texas rigging with a crankbait, which is I have 2 broke rods for that reason. But what type of rod, like what power are you using for like the Ned head? Are you using a medium light? Are you using a medium? Are
you asking me or Sean?
I'm asking you, and then we'll get into Sean.
Oh, so I typically go with a 610 medium extra fast.
Okay.
It's the Evergreen Combat Stick is what I've been using. It's an excellent little rod to throw little finesse techniques on. It's got the backbone. It's got the sensitive tip. So when I'm drifting that Hellgrammite, I can feel that my rod tip literally goes ding, 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 and all of a sudden the smallmouth, it's like bing. Like it's a really awesome. It's an awesome setup, and I've kind of settled on that 610 medium extra fast for my rod.
Okay.
And for the reel, I'll go with the 2500 Daiwa Kage with 10-pound braid. I like the braid. I use the braid. I've been using that a lot these past couple years that I've been introduced to it. Because like I said, I'm kind of a noob at fishing. I've done it a lot, but I never really expanded my horizons as to all this technique that we use. What is that?
It's the best braid you'll ever use. 12-pound Sunline X Plasma.
Okay.
And it's fantastic. I back everything on that now. Super sensitive, slick, cast great.
I'll have to look into that. But yeah, I'll use the 10-pound braid to 10-pound fluorocarbon for my setup to that rugby jig head and the Hellgrammite.
Dope. Sean, technique master, bass fishing for noobs.
I remember when I first started fishing the river, and I was, struggling, and there's an old guy at the shore, and he's like, "Oh, you got to get you some Hellgrammites," and I'm like, "Helga, what?" And so, being the noob that I was, I went on Google and searched for Hellgrammites, and that is actually how I found the Nico Hellgrammite. I ordered my first pack of them, and started out with kind of the poor man's version of the rugby head. It was I just used a regular EWG hook with a little like 1/16 ounce weight pegged on the front of it, and that's how I fished it for the longest time. And then when I started getting into some net heads, I switched to the net head. Didn't like it as much because of the exposed hook, but then I found a local company, a guy to me, local to me, named he goes by the name Ken's Jigs. I'm not sure, but he does a weedless Ned rig that I've fallen in love with, Ned head. And so that's what I fish them on now. I do have another head that I'm going to show you guys later when we talk about the leeches that I absolutely love. I haven't thrown it on the Hellgrammite yet, just because it works so well with the leech that that's kind of my go-to now. But we'll hit that a little bit later. But yeah, so my main, like I said, I Texas rigged it with a little 16th ounce peg weight, like a bullet weight at first, but now I'm pretty much on those EWG Ned heads, and either 1/16, or if I need a little bit weight, if the current's booking a little bit more, then I bump up to an 1/8. And I throw that on a St. Croix medium light extra fast tip. I think it's a Mojo Yak, and that's the rod I use for that. And I've caught 19, 20-inch smallies on it, so it handles them.
And Sean, what river system do you fish?
The Susquehanna. I live about 15 minutes away, so I also fish the Hobie BOS, but we won't talk about that because I did terrible.
Hey, I didn't do too good either, but I was proud of myself.
Yeah, it was my first major event, so I was happy just to go do it. So
yeah, it was an awesome experience.
Believe me, Brian, don't worry. Before the show, I told Sean how I'm always jealous because he'll post pictures, and I'll like me and Brad will be out, and he'll post on Saturdays when we're out, and I was like, man, it's not fair because he's right on the Susky. Like, the GMR is nice. I'm not going to dog the GMR. This year, I haven't been a fan of her, but that's okay. But I was like, man, he's at the Susky. Like, it's like cheating at that point. It just is. But
I am blessed to live here. I won't deny it, but
it's awesome.
But yeah, so I like both ways, and that's how I'm going to primarily rig that, is going to be with that rugby jig head. Typically, or basically, I've got to the point from throwing a couple jigs completely weedless. Jig Masters, I keep talking about them, but they make a finesse jig which Sean, I know you're familiar with it. They make a finesse jig that has a screw lock. You put it in there, and I can run all my plastics weedless with the finesse jig. So I've come to where if I can weedless something, I will always do it, because I'll watch Brad or somebody else I'm fishing with get hung up with a jig they're throwing or something, and I just keep going. I don't have to worry about it. And it was a video from the 80s. Somebody's talking about the only way you're going to catch the best fish is throwing into the nastiest crap you can find, which is true. And I've caught plenty of fish this year thrown into like trees and everything with the weedless setup. So I'm excited to try that out. I want to move right into the leech, mostly because I have a good bit, like a couple months experience with it now, and it's become like one of my favorite baits I've ever thrown. So Scott, kind of talk about, you talked about the Hellgrammite when it came out. Talk about the leech, how you guys came to do the leech.
So the leech, we were just, after the Hellgrammite, we needed to do something else. We can't be a one-trick pony, So we thought we wanted to do something, maybe a drop shot bait, and so that was our original thought. And we started with like a 4-inch worm, and then I don't quite remember how we got on the leech, but I got on the leech, I looked around, and I saw that I wasn't too impressed with the other leeches, and I thought, well, this kind of reminds me of the Hellgrammite. So I think there's plenty of room there to make a superior product in this category. And so we designed the leech, and if you've noticed, the leech is actually a slightly softer plastic than the Hellgrammites.
I did notice that when I got them. Whenever I get something new, I'm like a kid on Christmas. Like I'll rip the box open and I'll throw the paper. And now I've got better to where I like try to hide the paper so my wife doesn't see what I'm buying.
Yeah.
And I pulled the Hellgrammite out and I was playing with it and I had the leech and I noticed I was like, well, this leech it seems like it's softer, but still, I mean, the quality's still there. It just seems like it's a softer plastic.
Yeah. So on the leech, it's got all those little fine ribs. It's got a kind of that profile. You see little segments in there. So, it comes in at 3.8 inches. And so, so those segments are in there. So if you want to chop it down to 3 or something else, there's little markers there for you to do that. It provides a little bit of extra presence in the water and as far as the vibrations go. And also it's an aid in rigging. If you rig their leech a lot, sometimes it helps you place the hook a little better sometimes. It's super stretchy. It floats, scented. It's just a real nice product. And, I spent, even though it's a very simple looking product, I did do a lot of research into profiles of what leeches might be in nature. So, some of the dimensions on there are all specifically calculated. It's not just throwing up a shape. And the profile, you notice it's not real flat. It has enough meat to it that you can Ned rig it as well. So it's a very versatile bait. I know people who used it for trailers, on Neds, drop shot, Texas rig, top water. You can use it in many different ways. It's a very versatile bait. I'm quite pleased with it.
I could say that we all are too. What I loved about the leech, and it's almost every color, and I can show everybody while we were looking at this. Almost every color has the tail is just a tad bit different in color for most of them.
For some of them, yes.
Yes, for some of them, yeah. I mean, you have your straight shots, which you have a Morning Dawn, which I just love Morning Dawn. It's like the best color I've ever imagined in a bait.
Yes.
But what I love about it is, especially, I've been throwing the Eclipse a lot, and I haven't busted the Magma out, what we just saw and what Brian was showing to the camera. It looks so good, and it's a limited. Man. It says it's a limited release, so I'm afraid I'm never gonna get it again. But what's awesome is I was throwing it, and I like to do a tank test in my bathtub when I get stuff, and it's so cool. And I did it in the river too, and I was actually doing it today. I was just watching the bait because the water was shallow enough to where I could see it, but it had enough depth and stuff cover around it to where when that stands straight up, it has a little bit of flow on it, and that it's almost like an angler fish deep down in the ocean to where it's pitch black, but you see this little light. Yeah. And it's like Finding Nemo, and Dory goes up to it and then gets scared because it's an anglerfish, which if you've ever seen those, A, they get way bigger than the movie.
Terrifying.
And B, they're terrifying. Like they're like stupid. But I actually had, when it was going, I had a little smallmouth. Like he may have been 6 inches. Like he was super, like I wouldn't even, if he got it, I would let it go. But he was short striking the tail and he was just hitting that tail. So I love that because it gives it just a little bit something, a little presentation, a little bit different. Yeah. And I've been throwing it on Ned rig, and like you said, it's flat enough to where the current will move it a lot, but it's got meat enough to where you could slide it up on the hook, and it's not wanting to move around. It's not wanting to pop out the sides. It's perfect for it. And it's easily my new go-to Ned hook or Ned bait for the simple fact that it looks awesome, it rigs great, and the presentation is just killer.
Yeah, and you mentioned that action. If you actually take a look at the side profile of it, it's a little. You probably don't see other similar style baits with that exact profile from the side, the way the tail is tapers.
And, Sean, you want to throw yours up so we can show people?
And
if you can see it,
it's going to be hard to see
sideways.
Yeah, So a lot of that. Oh, you got the that limited release.
Yep.
Very
Yeah,
good. That's a wonderful color for me.
Black Aurora. Yeah.
Yes.
It's one of my absolute favorites. Yes.
But when I was working on that, there's some various formulas and dimensions that you can get in nature with natural leeches that will more likely simulate a natural motion of a leech. And that was the intention behind that. Now, whether that actually happens or not, it's hard to tell, but that was the intention, and there's some science behind that.
And to build off what Scott was saying, a lot of people don't realize this, but I worked in fisheries the past 3 years. I work for a different agency now, but we would sample river smallmouth, creek smallmouth. And something they were eating that a lot of people don't know are lampreys. People don't think we have lampreys in our river systems. And we have little lampreys. They're about 4 to 5 inches long. They're called East Brook lampreys. And the Nico leech absolutely looks, the profile of if you look up a lamprey, East Brook lamprey, I believe they're called. But we would find these smallmouth and their bellies would be full of lampreys. They were eating lampreys. And this leech, indirectly, yeah, it mimics a leech, but it also mimics a lamprey that is scurrying along the bottom. And smallmouth absolutely crush lampreys. It's crazy. And I realized this a couple years ago. I was like, what are all these things in their bellies? And the biologist I was working with, he was like, they're brook lampreys. They make migrations, spawning migrations up and down because they live in the soil and then they'll come out to spawn. And it's crazy because this leech, like, identical as the profile on the side.
This is like the worst picture of one that I can find, but it's
I don't know if you can see the yellow one better.
Yeah.
But they definitely, the side profile is pretty cool.
Yep.
It's just different. And there was some thought put into that, and I think it turned out okay. One thing I do want to mention is when I go fishing, I usually, for smallmouth, I'm usually wet wading in the Shenandoah, and I usually tie the canoe to me, and I walk around towing the canoe. And in the canoe, I have about 7 or 8 rods rigged up in all different ways that I play around and experiment, because I'm always experimenting. And but one thing I noticed is certainly when there's big fish around, I absolutely have the Hellgrammite and the leech tied up, because if I miss a fish on the Hellgrammite, I can go right back with the leech, and you don't have to wait long, and you can get that fish on the leech, or vice versa. And certainly through the spring and the summer, the leech, I was going basically 1 for 1 with the Hellgrammite as far as performance goes.
A lot of people don't know that, and they don't realize it. They think they miss a fish and the fish is just gone. Smallmouth, and Brian, you actually have a video that shows it great when you're getting the underwater footage of it and you're throwing the leech. But you'll throw it in, that smallmouth will run completely away, and then you just count down. You can count it down by 20 or 10, and that you can see it in the corner of the video. Smallmouth just comes up and he's looking at it, and then he'll go away, and then he'll come back. And I tell people all the time, if you're throwing a bait in there and you get hit, and Brad actually explained this to me a couple years ago, you throw a bait in there, you get hit on it, follow it right up with a finesse bait. And what's so good about the leeches, which I didn't know we had lampreys, which is dope. But what's so cool about the leeches and the Hellgrammite is they're 2 completely different presentations, but they're natural presentations. So when you throw it in there, they're used to seeing it. So, you missed on the leech, you throw the Hellgrammite in, they don't have anything. It's not like you're throwing, a jackhammer, and they're like, that looks like nothing I eat. But you throw a Hellgrammite in and be like, okay, well, the last thing was weird and it stung me, but they come back. I know what that is. I eat them all the time, and then they hit it and you're right back on. So that's a great tip that a lot of people don't realize. If you miss the first time, throw back in with something smaller or something different.
And I tell a lot of people is let this bait sell itself. Don't overwork it. You can let the current be your friend with the leech and the Hellgrammite. Yeah, the Hellgrammite, all these little appendages, if you watch it in the current, all these little appendages wave back and forth in the current. And letting that Hellgrammite just sit there on the bottom and just wave like that, it's just irresistible. And I tell people, I'll say, cast out there and just let it sit there. it's like almost like you're using live bait. Like you can literally sit there, just let it sit there. I've done it before I've done it thousands of times now, where I just let it sit there in a hole where I know there's a fish. It's just the matter of the fish coming around to see it. So once it sees it, just sitting there, it's just so natural. It'll pick it up, and you can sit there, watch your line jump, and then just start going downstream. It's truly incredible. The action and just having people to slow down with their presentation. You don't really have to work it that hard.
And one thing with smallmouth especially is a lot of times the first strike they do is to stun. So when you follow it up with something finesse, that's what you're doing. They're thinking, oh, all right, I nailed that thing, and now here it comes floating back down slow. And that's when they, chomp it and eat it the rest of the way. So definitely, I think that's a great tip of following up with if you miss a strike on something moving or definitely follow up with something.
Especially if you're topwater fishing with a popper or something and miss a blow up. Reel it in and throw the Hellgrammite or the leech or the crawl or something on the bottom. And typically, I've done it before, throw the Neds actually too. And you'll pick that fish up, especially if you missed him and didn't get no hooks in him.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely it's a technique and a tip a lot of people I think should utilize. So, Brian, do you rig the leech pretty much the same way as you rig the Hellgrammite with that?
Yeah,
head?
the little EWGs. I've dabbled with the drop shot because I don't really drop shot a lot, and I want to learn how to use that in a river system because I've heard it's very effective.
It can.
But yeah, I just run the same. Annoying. Yeah, I run that same just little EWG style on the leech because I'm fishing. Like you mentioned earlier, I'm trying to fish in the nastiest stuff, and I don't like to lose my baits. Period. I don't care what I'm using. I like to get it back and make it last as long as possible and get my value out of it. So the EWGs have shifted over, and I've seen a huge decrease in losing baits. So the same style, the same way.
Okay. I know, Sean, you said you had a jig head that you wanted to.
Oh yeah. When I actually found this jig head through I got another YouTuber. He's I think he goes by Angler Anchor. His name is Vincent Stutter.
Vincent,
yeah. And he actually is the first one I saw use it. So this is North Branch Tackle's sled head jig. You can see the way it connects to the leech is this tiny little needle. It's like a barbed needle. So it doesn't have a screw lock, which everybody who does these crazy plastics knows screw locks don't always play well with them. This needle threads like perfectly, and it holds it. And then on the other end, it's belly weighted, and then just a single hook on the back. So, and you can rig it weedless, just to expose the hook a little bit. And I'm telling you, I throw this in the Susquehanna, which is like Snag City, and I've had the same one tied onto my rod now for 2 weeks. I've caught like 20 or 30 fish on it. And I just don't lose them.
Wow, that's a unique. I like it. It's like a sled body or something.
Yeah. So Ryan at North Branch Tackle, he's a small guy, a small shop. I think he's Facebook only. If that's where I order from him. But this thing works amazing. Vincent sold me on it, and Ryan's been gracious enough. I gave him a quick shout out tonight. I said, "Hey, I'm going to mention you on the show. I hope it doesn't flood you with orders." But
no, we hope it does flood him with orders.
I know. I didn't want to overwhelm the poor guy because
I'd love to try him. To be honest, yeah, I like that.
I want to just add something about the Ryan's North Branch Tackles, those little sled heads. One thing it does is it allows for another presentation for Nico, because Nico is a floating material. And those sleds will actually hold the bait down horizontal on the bottom. And so that adds another dimension to your presentation.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And the tail goes right past the hook. So the tail is free to kind of wiggle and float and everything. It's like almost the perfect jig for it. So.
And I would also second your opinion that's a very nice setup, and I use them myself.
Okay, cool.
Well, that's how you know, everybody. The Nico man himself uses them for the Nico plastics. I know I was I posted about, the using the Nico. That's when Sean commented on it. I was like, yeah, I just the crawls, which I want to kind of get into next, because that's
oh yeah,
it's just, I'm super pumped because I have those too, and it's amazing. But we'll get into that. But I was trying to thread that onto jig, and I was like, man, I forgot my lighter, because an easy way to get super plastic onto a threaded twist lock is you heat up the twist lock, and then it kind of melts in the elastic. Two great things about that: one, that bait will never come off again. Like, you're losing the jig before it'll come off. The bad thing with it is I always forget my lighter, so I can't ever do it. So as someone who, I smoked for a couple of years. You mean to tell me
you can't find your lighters on the bank of the Great Miami River?
All right, so we're not going to go into that.
Don't touch.
Yeah, there's some things that, because there's stuff right next to the lighter that you could get some contamination in the vicinity of. But anyway, it's dangerous here on the banks. Don't bank fish certain parts of the GMR, or you're gonna go to the hospital for an infection. Anyway, weird. But he posted that, and I think my comment back to him was like, all caps, "That's genius," because it takes the work of having to light up the thing and then zipping it on. It just threads right in, locks in place, and like Scott said, it's a whole different type of presentation now, because it puts it horizontal parallel with the bottom, so it's kind of sitting up off the bottom. That's awesome. I'm definitely gonna buy a ton of those for reasons. But yeah, do we have anything we want to add about the leech? I love the leech. I think it's freaking amazing.
I think the colors are amazing too. Like he said, there's a couple of limited edition, but I've
look at that. Just look at the stretch.
Yeah,
it's nothing.
On the Susquehanna, the chartreuse I use when it's when I can sight fish, because all I got to do is to kind of watch for it to disappear, and then I know if it's in a fish's mouth, and just that's the only thing I caught on the Susquehanna, on the BOS on the Susquehanna is the only bait. Other than that, I would have skunked. So
the chartreuse is the most limited of the limited edition, so it could easily be sold out in the next few days.
Okay, well, while we're doing this,
very few of the chartreuse left right now.
Keep talking, because I'm going to have to order some now.
This is my second bag. This is the bag that isn't on my kayak. So,
next year we'll have some more colors come out next year. Some of the limited editions might come back. Some of them won't. Nico's a small company. We're not going to be doing new molds every year. We're not going to be introducing a lot of baits. It's a lot of it rests on me, and I can't do too much. And so we're going to take it, step by step. But one thing we can do is introduce a lot of cool colors. And so we're going to be doing more of that next year as the year goes on.
So that's awesome. And yes, Sean, the colors are fantastic. Like all the colors are just like that chartreuse pepper, which that's what I know it's probably just chartreuse, but it looks like a chartreuse pepper.
No, it does it has some speckle to it.
Yeah, the chartreuse pepper, the magma. I love the look of that. I just want to stare at it. I don't even want to fish.
This is what I used at Dale Hollow when you guys had the paddle and fin at Dale Hollow, and this is what I caught. I think 7 of my keepers out of the 10 I caught in those 2 days on this leech, this magma leech, man. It was because it resembles just like a night crawler, and then you got that little orange tip there just to finesse that bite. Oh my goodness. They absolutely destroyed it at Dale Hollow, and it was amazing.
Yeah. So
you're giving all your sauce away, Brian. People are going to come down.
I made a video about it, so it's like it's already out
there. Yeah, I know people were asking us because me, Brad, and Justin were able to get on some fish. We weren't in the tournament or anything, but we were getting on them, and people were asking like, "Oh, what were you using?" It's like, "Yeah, just the jig, man, and Ned rig. Just local colors." Like I didn't tell anybody I was catching fish on a jackhammer. And then like the day after the tournament, Brian posts a video. This is what I used the whole time. And I was like, dude, like I know you might be a little new to tournament fishing. You can't do that. But he still does it, and he still does fine. So whatever. Keep doing you, man. I love it. But yeah, so let's run. I'm loving because we're at an hour and we still have so much to talk about, and I love it because most of our shows are starting to wind down, and this is great. Yeah, we're getting right into it. That's what I want to get into. So the Nico Crawl, I know it's new, correct?
Yeah, so it's pretty new. I mean, we came out with a whole batch of new products, and this was the first of the new products. And so here it is right here. Let's turn it this way. So it's it's a 3.2 inch bait. It's there's a lot of unique things about this bait. Is number one, the claws are really spread far apart. If you look at other crawls on the market, the crawls are all very similar, straight, like a swimming crawl. And this one's a defensive crawl. And because of Nikko's material, we can do these things. So those claws will not interfere with your hookup. They collapse. That's another good thing about Nikko products. They collapse very nicely in the fish's mouth. And when you use, like, for example, when you use them top water, you'll get a lot more hookups you're not going to miss very many fish, top water, because they just collapse so nicely in the mouth. So the claws will collapse nicely. That's a very, very defensive pose. Just little details like all the little claws on the legs, even the antenna are at the proper length and the proper angle. Or of course, crayfish can change their angles, but again, it's attention to detail and doing the right thing. A lot of baits are just very straight, short antenna, and that's not natural. And so it's just another little detail to make it to make the fish realize that they're actually dealing with a bait instead of something artificial. The belly has a lot of detail on the belly. You see the slot in the back of it as well. So they're designed for anywhere from a 2/0 up to a 4/0 hook. And one interesting thing is, maybe Bryan, you can hold that sideways. You can see the body angles.
Yeah.
So the body angle. So the body angle is designed to mimic a crawl where it's right on the verge of running away. It's got those extended claws. It's got a body posture that just says, I'm in danger, I'm scared, I'm vulnerable. And, the thought process is that will hopefully inspire the fish to go ahead and chomp on it a little more readily. So,
yeah, no, I 100%, like, that's the first thing I said when I saw it. And this was at Vance Outdoors. There was the buddy I was dove hunting that morning when I was like, hey, let's go to Vance. And I was going for Nikko stuff. I was going there for bow stuff. And I saw Nikko and I was like, I went over there and I saw the crawls. And I am a big believer in smallmouth hate crawls when they're in a defensive position. Even if they don't want to eat, they're going to kill the thing anyway, because they just don't like it when they're trying to bow up to them. And it's the perfect, body position for that, because it's shaped where the tail's kind of tucked in, like you said. It's ready to run away, but when it hits the ground, its claws are up, and like you said, they're wide. Like most of your crawls, when I try to Texas rig them or throw them,
they're just like
even
straight
on
up.
jigs, it's a swimming crawl. 99% of them are swimming crawls, where they might float and they might be there, and especially jig trailers, they'll move, but they're right there. So with these coming out and angled up, it's like, I'm here, leave me alone. And smallmouth see that and say, I don't care, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah,
and
you see those. Yeah, you see those crawfish on the river when they put their claws up. They're not just like this. They're like, "Come get me."
Yeah, they're
like,
trying to be a lot bigger than they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big defense mechanism, and I think that's what smallmouth see, that they're trying to be big. And I personally think smallmouth are just bullies, and they're just like, you're not big. It's like that kid who finally stands up to the bully, except it's not like the movies and the bully just beats the crap out of the kid. Yeah, that's just what it is. And it's like, yeah, I'm big, and smallmouth's like, I'm gonna kill you because I can. I'm not hungry. I'm not even gonna eat you. I'm just gonna kill you.
Yeah. I mean, one thing about the baits with the Nikko material, again, you can take these crawls and you can stretch these out. And so at the time when we made these, we got a bunch of crawls on the market, and we actually did like little strength tests. And so they're at least 2 times, and most of the time 3 times or more stronger than any other claw on the market. And there's one other interesting thing about the claws, is that each cavity in our mold is unique. So the little each crawl has a unique the dimples on them.
That's awesome.
So that's sick. Yeah, Brian's learning this for the first time, and he's looking. He's like, "What?"
Yeah, you can see the dimples. You can see the
little bumps on there.
Yeah.
So they're unique to each one, and so I'm a very firm believer that fish are extremely aware of their environment, and they're extremely they're able to read minute detail, and that's my philosophy and thought on it. And so, if you lose your crawl or either you miss it, if you wanted to, you could just pull another crawl from your pack and throw it out there, and it's going to be slightly different than the one you threw before. And
so cool.
To the degree that helps, at some point you got to ask some people, what's the value of one catch? And it could be a lot. And so anyway, we take these little extra steps to make a product where that people will be happy, and take that extra step and try to make it so that the fish find it difficult to learn that these are not natural things to eat.
Yeah, that is one thing. I know Bryan messaged me. I don't know. You messaged me a couple days ago. You like, have you tried the crawls yet? And you sent a picture of one rigged up. Yeah, man, and it catches tanks.
I caught that this past Sunday on the Sowders. 19-incher.
Yeah,
there you go. And I was like, I didn't. I'm the Bryan's learned this. I'm like the worst texter ever. I always forget to send messages back and crap. And but I got the pack because I had some of the crawls too, and I was looking at them, and I was like, man, the attention to detail is just so finite. Like, it's every little detail. Like, I notice how like I said, the tail tucks in the back, and it doesn't just tuck in the back. The whole back is arched a little bit, and it's different. Like, the attention to detail is just insane. And, you really get down to the nitty gritty of the bait. And like I told you, Scott, we had a conversation before the show about a week ago. Before the bait ever hits the water, if people are confident in how the bait looks and confident in the bait, they will be more confident when they throw it. And that's one of the biggest hurdles people get when they want to try something new, is they have no confidence in throwing it. Like, if I just gave a frog to somebody and said, hey, and I've been playing for everyone watching, I've been playing with the frog the whole time. Because I have so many in front of me because we did a topwater show. But if I gave someone a frog and they've never thrown it before, and I give them just a plain Jane, like I gave them an old beat up Z-Man frog, for example, that I've lost both eyes on and half the skirt's gone, and the hook's not even right there anymore. And I give them this, and they're like, oh yeah, this bait is well loved, and they're not going to have confidence throwing it. But if you give them something brand spanking new out the package and it looks good, it looks correct, like it's supposed to be, a lot of people get that confidence and then feel confident in throwing it, which will lead them to fish it better. And they're not trying to rush through fishing it like, I have no confidence with this, and they rethink it. Like, I was like that with jigs. I didn't have a whole lot of confidence with jigs. I throw it out there and then bounce it 47 times back to me, and then I throw it out there and let it sit, and then I was just all over the place until I got the Jigmaster jigs, and I was like, dude, I love these jigs. And I felt confident throwing them because I liked how they looked. I liked how they rigged. And when I started throwing them, I started catching fish because I was just working a jig like I was supposed to naturally, because I felt confident in the bait. So
the confidence right out of the package is important.
It's super important. That's one of the biggest things with baits. And I think a lot of companies, especially your huge companies, don't take that into consideration anymore. They're just pumping out new shapes that make no sense. And it's somebody's like gets it because it's the latest, greatest thing, but then it makes no sense. So
having designed these baits and going through the process internally to turn them into a product for the market, I can tell you there's a lot of competing pressures and lots of different directions. And I can, when I look at other larger companies' baits, it would be unfair to criticize the designers because they probably came up with something that was quite nice. But by the time it goes through accounting and all the numbers are crunched, and hey, just like, for example, with our crawl, just doing the antenna like this instead of straight, that costs money. Hey, if you make the antenna straight, and it's going to save us this much money. If we make them shorter, it's going to save us this much money. So when you go through all those details with the mold, when the people who work on the molds and the production guys, there are even with Nico. I mean, we do make compromises on some areas to accommodate that, because some of the baits we came up with, if we didn't compromise, you'd be paying $40 a pack. and that's not going to happen.
Well, thank you.
So we had to make some changes. So anyway, yeah. To do the attention to detail, we hope to give people confidence. We hope to have them feel good when they use our product, and then I firmly believe that leads to more fish at the end of the line. And if that makes them happy and they're a happy customer, they're fishing a product that brings happiness and doesn't hurt the environment. So.
Yeah, no, and I'm big that the company has a big standing, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, and I didn't really hit on it, but has a big standing on caring about the environment, because that's one thing. And Brian, as working in conservation and things like that, and Scott doing it when you're younger, and then doing it now, and then Sean looking at big river systems, and me looking at smaller river systems. If you don't take care of the river, you can watch the river turn on you in a year. Like the whole ecosystem can change immediately. I mean, we're seeing it with Asian carp, things like that. The populations around the country are getting in. Whole ecosystems are just dying. So conservation is a big part of it, and I'm really happy that Nico takes the time to think about that. It's cool to see, especially from a company like you said. You're a small company, but I mean, I personally think just from once I started researching it, I mean, you have a good presence, so people know who you are. It's not like it's a small company running out of a house. Like, people know who Nico is, and you have that footprint. So I'm about that. Yeah. What do we want to talk with? So now we're getting to the limits of my expertise in Nico, because I've only used a few things. There is one bait there's two baits I really want to talk about. One is the new Minnows, but we'll get to that. I really want to talk about the octopus.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because on your Instagram, I know. See, it's a trick question, because octopus and smallmouth make no sense. But on your Instagram, it shows a picture of a giant octopus sticking out of a fish's mouth. So a smallmouth of all fish. Yeah. So I want to talk about that.
Okay. Okay. Well, and the octopus is. I mentioned earlier in the program, when I first started with Nico, I had a tadpole, a shrimp, and an octopus for smallmouth, and they all performed very well. And at the time, there you go. That's the 3.5 inch. That's the size I use the most. And that color is that black Aurora, so that's a really nice color. So the octopus, I mean, you could look at it as a tube, but the proportions are different. The body's small, the tentacles long, kind of reverse proportions. Well, I think if you fish it exactly like a tube, I think you'll probably have some trouble. I think you kind of got to play with it to find what's good for you. I know some guys in the Great Lakes and who fish lakes a lot like to drop shot these. And I personally keep it on that same rig that I do my Hellgrammite with. It's just like a 1/16 ounce bullet weight. Same as Sean was describing earlier when he was talking about the way he started. What I'll do is I'll just shove that 1/16 ounce bullet weight right in the head. The head's hollow. And the line, I mean, it's got a hollow section through there, so you can put the hook through, thread it up the line, jam the bullet weight in there, and just have a freely dangling hook behind it. I don't have to change out, and I just kind of swim it. And it's got, with those legs there, you can imagine it's got plenty of movement. And generally speaking, the fish are not shy about hitting it. And I do know that the octopus has put some money in people's bank accounts up on Lake Ontario and maybe some other of the other Great Lakes. I'm not quite sure. A lot of those things are kind of secret when money's involved. But
yeah, Brian.
So the octopus, Nico has a 1.5, like for panfish or trout, a 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, and a 6. And I've caught fish on all of them. And if you check out my Instagram, I was Instagram or Facebook, I think. I was actually using this one right here. This is the exact octopus that I posted those pictures of. I don't normally use red for smallmouth, but there's something about when I'm on a river, I just you just get a feeling, and usually when I just get a feeling and I act on it, it usually turns out pretty well. And that day I thought, you know what, I just got a feeling this is going to get hit. And so this one here's, I only got that day that I went fishing only about an hour and a half, but I got I think it was like 5 smallies on this one. And so,
dude, so
like
Bryan,
I said,
you have to make a video.
Yeah,
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Well, I also will say that I don't have any sort of data or anything. I'm just going by my gut feel on it. The octopus catches fish all year round, but it just seems to me that when September rolls around, I want to put the octopus on. It just speaks to me, and it gets fish on. And largemouth, smallmouth, it doesn't matter. They get on it. And the trick is, there's a little trick to fishing them is, if you know you're going to fish the octopus, put your bullet weight on upside down, because that front end is wider, so it won't pull through the head of the octopus as easily. So you'll spend less time fixing it. It's no big deal to fix. The baits are really stretchy. You can still jam them in there and fix it. But, I value my time on the river.
Yeah.
Every catch is a blessing, and I like to be blessed by catching fish.
There you go. I'll be with that too. And see now, so Bryan, you have to make a video, and that's going to be my new challenge. Is I'm going to buy some octopus, and I'm going to catch some smallies out of the
So
big
I'm going to tell you some juice that I don't normally tell people, which is weird, because I post everything on YouTube. I actually take the skirts off my chatterbaits and put the 3.5-inch squid over the keeper. So instead of like your typical skirt, it's an octopus skirt. And since you throw chatterbaits a lot, Matt, I don't know if you throw them a lot, Sean.
I not as much, but
yeah,
I do. I have some. So
yeah, I'll take the skirt off the chatterbait and slide the octopus over it. And I'll make a video for you because it's pretty interesting. I've caught a few fish, not a lot, but it works. And it's just an interesting swimming action watching squid arms instead of a skirt swim through the water. It's really awesome.
There's one little extra thing is the octopus will have more mass than a typical skirt material.
Yeah.
And the chatterbaits are very unnatural. They're very unnatural sounds. They're very harsh. They're very loud. And the bass are predators. They're always learning, and that is the profile of a smart fish will learn not to hit something that's loud, sharp, obnoxious in the water. And so when you have more, like the octopus skirt will have more mass, what that does is it helps moderate and softens some of those vibrations. And at the end of the day, none of us really know why a fish bites. But we apply as much knowledge as we can and experience. And I have another bait here, these little Econago minnows that a lot of my pro staff swear that putting these on a chatterbait will increase production. And this is what I do for a living, and I'm convinced. Again, I don't have any scientific data, but I'm pretty convinced that moderating that chatterbait by those vibrations and that sound, I think, is a plus. They're still plenty noisy. The fish can still find it easily. You don't have to be that harsh. And I think softening it with a material that acts very naturally, I think it also produces a more natural frequencies as it goes through the water. And I think that will make the difference on the edge, on the edges.
Yeah.
And I think you'll get more fish.
It's just cool because you can just experiment with so many different things with the octopus, and you can let your imagination go wild on the river. You can throw it in just so many ways.
Yeah. So just one interesting thing with the octopus. I mean, you can get an octopus and you can put a worm inside it and have it like this. The octopus are built like the 4.5, the 3.5. You can actually put a 3.5, inside the 4.5, and you can mix your colors up and add bulk. So there's a lot of things you can do with the octopus. But it's so excited. It's a cool bait. I do want to say that it's a different bait, and so whoever tries it and buys it, play around with it, because once you're going to get a feel for what's natural and works, and then when you do, it's a fantastic bait. And again, I think for some reason, I think the fall is, like I said, it's always a good bait, but I think it becomes an excellent bait from probably now until like mid-October. It just something about this period of time that just seems to be a little different with that octopus.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I'm so excited.
There goes more of my money.
Yep, pretty much. Pretty much. Okay, so I kind of want to talk about the minnow now, because you just brought it up. Because we have a lot of guys who love chatterbaits. I know me and Brad, when the river gets muddy, he's gonna hate that I'm telling people, but I don't really care because he's not here. We'll throw jackhammers when the river's muddy in certain sections and get hammered on it, and that's like all we'll catch our fish on is like jackhammers and chatterbaits. So you mentioned the minnow,
yes,
that a lot of your pro staff's using.
Yeah, so it's just a simple. Well, that's the wrong. Let me get this one easier to see. It's just a simple minnow. Oh, there we go. And that Aurora color is that's the number one seller. That's a special bait there. That's my favorite. So it's a 4.6 inch. It's got those eyeballs in there, which is another cool thing about Nico. Some of the baits have those eyeballs like that. It's got the vertical tail, so if you fish it straight, you're not going to get a ton of action on it. But you can also turn it 90 degrees and fish that tail flat. Fish don't seem to mind whether the eyes are properly placed or not. Yeah. People use them as trailers. The chatterbait trailers. Texas rig them, put them on jig heads. Fish them top. They're great top water. You don't have to be super noisy for top water. I think a lot of people always think you got to make giant noise. And for when I'm fishing ponds or, around where I live, I usually go to the ponds that are like covered in algae and nobody fishes, because my baits float. And all I have to do is hit a few pockets and just plop, plop, plop. That doesn't need to be much. And something about this, like worms. Worms are so popular. It's got that long, slender profile. It's, easy for a fish to ingest. And this is a long, slender profile, and top water, they just jump on it. Some people chop them in half and use them as nets. So this bait will, again, this, like a lot of Nico stuff, this bait lasts forever. I don't think anybody's ever worn one out. And the other cool thing is that it's got a hole in the head. And so they're great for Nico rigging. And when I fish on the Shenandoah River in Virginia, I'll just shove a little nail weight in there. You can see it in there, maybe.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
So, there seems to be like about a 3-week period starting about now, every year, where the fish just go crazy over a Nico rigged minnow. I just plop it down on the bottom, just like Bryan was saying, let the bait do itself, do the work. And that tail just flutters and moves very easily. And just set it there, and they just love it. They just pick it up. It's a very easy bait to fish, very versatile. But it's also a bait you need to know what you want to do with it. The Hellgrammite you can just throw out there. A beginner can throw the Hellgrammite, and they'll put fish on. Probably the same with the leech, more or less. I think this one you kind of got to know what you're doing, and with it, and maybe target it a little better. But it's a really effective bait. It's used for salt water and fresh water, So, that's it. That was one of Nico's earlier baits.
Yeah, I really like the profile. Now, with that, are you able, kind of like with, I know it's not segmented, but like 4.6, some people might think that's too big of a profile. Are you able to cut that down?
Yeah, just chop the head off. Yeah,
and just cut it down.
I'll actually cut like 2/3 of it. Can you hold that bait up, Scott? I don't have any Ganaga minnow on me.
Sure.
I'll cut like 2/3 of it to where like 2.5 inches and the tail is left, and then I'll put a net head on it. So it's just like a little minnow, like a Demiki rig, pretty much.
Yeah. So it's great that way as well. That's why I said you can chop it and use it on, Brian's one of them that chops it and uses it that way.
Yeah, no, I didn't even see those, so I'm happy you brought it up because it kind of leads into the next thing, and this will probably be one of the last few things we'll talk about because we're going on to an hour and a half, and Brian's gonna yell at me because it's a long show, but I don't care. I want to talk about the other new bait, and this is how we can wind it down to the Winnow, which I think, and I'm about to show it in the lunar color. I've fallen in love with this color already because it looks amazing in this bait. That core shot looks awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Winnow.
Unfortunately, the pictures just don't do it justice. You have to see this color in person. When I first met Scott in person at ICAST, I went to ICAST and met him in face to face, and he pulls out the lunar color, and I was like, hold on, what is that color? He's like, this is lunar. I was like, no, that looks way different. You cannot capture the essence of this color unless you see it in person. Yeah. It's an incredible color, and I absolutely hammer fish on the GMR with the lunar.
Yeah, this is the color I really had in mind for a really, really long time. And then during development, some people who gave me some advice also had this color in mind themselves. So it was a kind of a coalescence of minds about let's do this type of color. So the color, it's actually, the core is actually that black. It's actually a black core, and that core is all squid extract. That's how it's colored. And,
wow, really?
So the blue
That's
that
cool.
you see is actually on the outside of that. There's a clear layer with the blue flake on the outside. Adds a kind of a color with depth. So if you look at animals in nature, there's all kinds of strategies that they employ for coloration, and if you can add depth to it, sometimes it confuses predators if they perceive things, if they're confused on the depth and the distance. And so that's another thing that kind of represents or mimics nature to some degree. This bait has really, really got a lot going on. This is probably the most innovative ribbed swim bait out there. It's really this is the bait from which all other innovations and other companies will be based upon, I think. So first, we'll just start with the most obvious is the ribs. You see them zigzag all the way around the body. But if you notice, they transition to straight towards the end. So the angles get slightly less and less as it goes down.
Oh yeah, like right here.
Yeah. So, if you fish a lot of the rib swim baits, you'll hear people say this brand is good, this one's no good. I don't want to mention names, but when you look at them, I mean, a straight ribs down. Number one, they're easy to make. Okay, so first, that's cheap. They're cheap to make straight ribs. But when the straight rib baits are being swum through the water, they're emitting the same frequency of vibrations only. It's a monotone presentation. If the fish are on that frequency, if that triggers them that day, then great. But there's a lot of days it won't. And so you're fishing with an inferior product if it's just got straight ribs. So by zigzagging these ribs and transitioning them, you provide a full spectrum of frequencies. And you're gonna cover, most likely you're more likely to cover a frequency that a fish is going to be tuned in on. Because whatever bait they do, all these things moving in the water emit vibrations of some frequency. And, you and I, we don't always know what that is. And even if we did, how would we mimic it?
Yeah.
So this bait covers those frequencies. And, during testing, we put this bait up against a lot of the straight ribbed, monotone, some very famous brands. And, the reports we got back were tough day of fishing, couldn't get anything on my main rib swim bait, but I got hits. I caught a fish on the rib, on the Nico Winnow. It would, when paired against a bait of very, very similar design, it excelled quite well. And it seemed to prove our design, and it seems to prove what we set out to do. So that's one thing. Also, just because of our material, the body inside is actually slightly thinner than other bodies out there. The ribs are very thin and soft. They, in addition to emitting the frequencies, they'll also move in the water, and so you have it creates a live image, like a live bait, because it's not just being drugged through the water, creating vibrations through pure displacement. The ribs are also moving, and that creates another aspect, another depth to the fish attracting, part of the design. The one thing it's going to be hard to see here, and put me up on the big screen. It's okay. So you can see the design is a bit triangular.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah.
So that we designed this bait to be a slow retrieve and a fast retrieve bait. It seems like the evolution of fishing with rib swim bait seems to have gone towards, from what I understand, has gone from extending the season a little longer into the colder water when things are slowing down. And so this bait was designed to be able to extend your season either on the front side or the back side by being able to fish this bait in colder water. And one thing we didn't mention early in the program is Nikko's plastic remains softer at colder temperatures than other plastics. So we can also do that. It's a slow retrieve, but designing a slow retrieve bait, swim bait is pretty easy, but how do you stabilize it when you want to rip it real fast? And so that triangular design helps stabilize that bait. So you can this bait is stabilized at high speeds or slow speeds. And the other thing was the belly profile. It's kind of hard to tell, but if you actually see the product in real life, maybe look at the pictures. The belly is swollen. It's got a swollen belly. And again, this is another thing to mimic nature, because when a fish are targeting, like smallmouth, they will, or all fish, all predator fish will target their prey by one, accessibility, obviously, and the other one is nutrient value. And a swollen belly also represents a higher nutritional value. Fish pick up on that. They know it. They read it in their DNA. And so when you're fishing this bait, like I said, there's a lot going on in there. It just appeals to fish on so many levels. It's got just little details put in there. Some of them are minor. We've got hash marks on the tail. It's a big tail. The tail really moves very easily. You can barely move this bait. Some people Nico rig this bait, by the way, because
Really,
the tail
moves.
One of our pro staff actually, when eventually the tail will come off. They have gone up to about 150 catches and still performing well, but eventually it will come off. And I know if it goes against a 3-foot barracuda, it comes off pretty easily.
Yeah, fish with teeth don't count. So.
But as far as freshwater fish, it'll last a long time. But when it eventually does wear out, I also use them on Ned rigs as well. But the hash marks, there's a bunch of little designs on the tail. So if you want to tighten it up, it's got a heavy thump to it. If you want to tighten that up, you can chop off part of the paddle, and there's marks on there for you to help guide you, so you remember next time when you get it the way you want. There's a little slot in the back for exposing your hook. There's markers. You want to swim this straight, right? So there's actually markers in there, so you can line your bait up properly on the hook, so that you can get it straight. There's even a marker for a nail weight if you wanted in there. And the head is designed so that if you chop it off, it fits most jig heads that are on the market. But but a lot of, and there's other little details in there they probably shouldn't talk about, but there's a lot going on in this bait, and that it really is, as a lot of thought went into this. And this bait is just, by the way, going zigzags all the way around the bait. Nikko's the first company in the world to do it, because you cannot make this bait with traditional molds. It took us over a year. Nikko had to visit lots of different high-tech industries in Japan, look at different machinery, different concepts of approaching this problem to make this bait. It's now it does cost, right now it's at $14.99 for 5 of them. A lot of people shy away from that because they don't understand the value there. But again, when you know, some of the baits can go 150 fish. We think it catches more fish, and when testing that we did, it certainly seemed to catch more fish. You know, if you look at the money people pay on a fishing trip, just in your gas or just going to the store or replacing another pack, then it's one of the best values out there. And so there, anyway, that's sort of the winnow.
Yeah. So you have something, Brian?
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things to try to show people when I'm making videos is the value of a catch. Like when you break it down, if your Hellgrammite's catching 40 smallmouth and that Hellgrammite was $2, you can kind of break down cents to catch, if that makes any sense. Like,
yeah. So
when someone sees an expensive product like the Winnow, and you can go out there and catch so many fish on it, you can break it down and break those catches down into a dollar value. And then you can kind of be like, okay, well, this Nikko pack, this 5-pack of Winnows will last 20 Kitech packs. And we know how, you know, just different companies, but just the durability and trying to get people to understand that you can get a lot of value out of these baits, out of this plastic.
Yeah, I haven't done any calculations lately, but in the early days when we were getting started, we did some analysis, and the cost of fishing Nikko, we calculated to be 1/20th the cost of fishing traditional plastics.
Oh wow!
And yeah, so that's what we came up. And as far as durability, as far as like Hellgrammites, I've gone around 250 catches before I lose them. I think a lot of times I could probably go about 500 on a bait. The only exception is when you get snagged and start yanking. I usually fish just straight braid. And braid will do braid. You know, the baits are tough, but if you're really swinging your rod trying to get a snag off with braid, that braid can do damage to the baits. But otherwise, you know, they last a really, really long time.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. Being in the big swim bait game, for example, I'm used to spending an asinine amount of money for a bait. It's just how it is. I mean, I have hard plastic or hard swim baits that I spent upwards of $200 on. But for your average angler, what's always weird to me. Like, we spend so much money on reels and rods for the concept of, well, if I buy this really nice combo, it's going to last me forever. As long as I take care of it, it's going to last. I never have to worry about replacing it, which is the same concept that I think when it comes to baits and more expensive baits. Because the last thing I want to talk about tonight before we jumped off here was, why is your bait worth the pricing? And you explained it perfectly. The durability factor of it, the fact that, you know, Brian, you stated it. We all know about Kitechs. I'll just say it. I don't really care. I'll throw a Kitech and get 2 fish on it, maybe, before the tail rips off or it gets rips or the hook rips through the head, and you can't T-pose it any other way because it's all destroyed. So, and you're looking at a pack of those are $7 or $6.99. So if you go through a pack of those a week, if you fish, like I fish, you know, multiple times a week, if I go through a pack of those a week, in 2 weeks, I've bought 2 packs of Kitechs. That's the same price of 1 pack of Winnows. And if those Winnows are lasting me, you know, let's just say conservatively 40 fish a Winnow, I'm not using more than 1 pack of Winnows every month.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that's on a bad month. Like, good month, I mean, I still have plenty of durability. So the cost of it, I love how you explained it. And you did the testing at the early beginning of it where it's 1/20th, and because people don't think of the long run, they just think of the short run.
Yeah.
Because they're so used to baits falling apart and lasting 2 or 3 fish. to where once they understand that these baits last, I mean, theoretically they last. If you don't get snagged, like with straight braid, Scott, and you're throwing, you're throwing it and you're not getting snagged and you're just catching fish, theoretically these baits will last you until you lose them.
Yeah.
Unless something, like a pike comes up. Okay, well, I don't care. You can, unless you're throwing steel, you're not going to win that battle. So who cares?
Hey, I did win that battle on a Hellgrammite 2 weeks ago on my video.
I saw the video.
I got a pike to eat a Hellgrammite. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I saw that video. That was a good video. And it was a good catch. And it explains it perfectly because did you keep finishing that Hellgrammite the rest of the day?
Yeah.
Yeah,
the whole
I can
day
tell you there's plenty of baits, including some that come in blue packaging that I've caught toothy fish on, and they get rips in them, and it's not their fault. It's a pike. It's not supposed to. Yeah. It's not meant for that. So yeah, I mean it's awesome. You explained it great. I mean we covered quite a bit.
I was gonna say there's some additional aspects to it. Is a lot of times people don't calculate what's the cost of restocking every time. It's not just the cost of the baits. Driving to the store could theoretically be lost fishing time. It's gasoline, it's wear and tear in your car, it's the risk of an accident. And then what is the time loss in re-rigging it all the time, or digging through your bags and putting more baits on? And what's the cost of space when you're out fishing? I think a lot of us would like more space, to have more stuff, yes. Right? You can, like Brian mentioned earlier in the program, you can just put on one bait. He's good. As long as he doesn't lose it, he's good to go. And that's true. And, I carry, because I do this, I carry like a big bag. I've got everything under the sun, with me, but I rarely ever change out. And you never really have to. And, but it saves time, money, theoretically. At some scale, it even saves lives because people are, after so many miles driven going to the store all the time, you even consider that. And at the same time, it also completely harmless to the environment. You're not harming anything. And then, it's just a lot of merit to it. Besides that, they catch fish and a lot of fun.
Yes.
There you go. So guys, this has been a great show. I'm super pumped to start using Nico. I don't know if anybody noticed when I was sharing the screen, I added some of those core shots to my cart. But yeah, I'm pumped. Scott, Brian, thank you for coming on tonight. Sean, thanks for co-hosting with me, man.
No problem, man.
You got any closing thoughts, Sean? Any questions you wanted to ask that didn't get answered?
I wanted to give a quick shout out on the if you guys are panfish or trout, they're little stuff like the waxworm. I don't know if you've ever fished with waxworms. They're the most pain in the butt thing. Like even a little nibble and it's gone. This thing will last forever. It is like
ice fishing.
The best thing for trout I have ever used, and it just it's like small or it is panfish and trout crack. They literally love it.
Yeah. So for people who do fish the smaller fish or trout, we have stoneflies, caddisflies, waxworms. We have these little guys, these little they're kind of hard to see, little strips, maybe that way.
Oh yeah, that looks.
And Nico makes awesome baits, and if you're interested in fishing the smallest soft bait in the world, Nico makes that too. 0.2 inches long.
Wow.
Oh Lord. There you go. You're talking about micro. That's where it's at.
Yeah. Well, there was I used to have a store that specialized in micro fishing, and they would buy a bunch of. They went out of business. They shut down during the pandemic, but I got to see a lot of photos of fish like this big, caught on Nico's little tiny little fly larva. It's 0.2 inches long.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
Quite a neat thing.
Yeah. Well, Scott, do you have any closing words for everybody? Let everybody know where they can find Nico at.
Sure. So, you could just do a Google search, Nico Fishing or Nikko Baits. It'll put you right. The online store will get you there, or it'll get you to the online store pretty quick. It's Nico-fishing.myshopify.com, and we have everything there. And I'll just do a quick little pan down here. There's a lot of other baits we didn't talk about, but there's a lot of cool stuff there. And I just want to tell people that when you make a good bait, sorry about the camera.
You're good.
You know, when you make a good bait, and Nico does make good baits, don't be afraid to try something different, because, you know, we talked about the octopus tonight, but I do great on the shrimp. You know, look at the squid strips. They're easy to fish. You know, I even catch largemouth. Brian will laugh. He knows what's coming. You know, I even catch largemouth on this. and exactly. In fact, this exact crab has already been through several largemouth. So when you make a good bait, it opens your eyes. When you try new things, you learn. What you will perceive and feel and learn about the fish and fishing. You'll be a much better fisherman when you try new things. Being in this industry, I can tell you that a lot of what people are told to use are what people are paid to tell you to use. You know, just don't be afraid. Try new things. And Nico has a lot of new things, and I think you'll be happy. And if you don't, contact me and tell me why. And and so also for everybody, I put a code up on the website for everybody. So it's hang on, I gotta make sure I got it right. It's Paddle and Fin, PADDLENFIN, and you'll get 10% off your order.
Awesome.
That is awesome. We appreciate that for sure.
Absolutely.
For all the viewers out there, and it'll help a lot of people get into the bait. I know I'm the type of person, if something new and I have a code, I'm like, yeah, even if I don't like it, I don't really care. I'm not paying the full price for it. And then, you know, you end up loving it. So that's awesome. So we appreciate it. Scott, we appreciate you coming on and sharing Nikko Baits with us. Brian, let the people know where they can find you, social media, YouTube, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The Creek Crawler on YouTube. If you search creek fishing in Ohio, you'll probably come across one of my videos. The same as Instagram, the Creek Crawler. If you search it up on Instagram, I'm pretty sure it's the only one. But yeah, just the YouTube and Instagram is my socials.
Good to go.
Awesome.
And then Sean, let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, you guys. Hopefully, most of the listeners know me, but every Monday on the Best Fishing for Noobs show. Brian, I'll definitely have to have you on sometime. We'll talk some creek fishing.
Oh, absolutely, man. I'd love to.
But I'm still kind of building my social media presence. I'm kind of a slacker, old school. But you can find me on all the big on Facebook, Instagram. No TikTok yet, but we're getting there.
Okay, I don't either. I'm not about that much. I can't do that. I just watch stupid videos on there and send them to Brad and my wife, and then my wife sends me a bunch of dog videos. So,
but Matt, I appreciate you letting me come on co-host with you. It's been fun.
Oh no, man, I loved it, especially the amount of experience you have with the Nikkos. This is one of the first shows that I've done that I don't know a lot about what I'm fishing with, but the little experience I got, I'm super pumped. I love them a lot, and I'm excited to try the other stuff. I'm really excited to try the Minnow. Now that you've explained it, because I didn't know. It's crazy. Last little tidbit, and then we'll close off. Sorry, Brian. It's crazy how a paddle tail that's been around, that style of bait's been around forever, but the amount of innovation you put in it to make it new, which is awesome. I love seeing that, especially from small businesses. But on that note, everyone, long episode, longer than normal. That's what Brad gets for not being here. But thanks for sticking around with us.
Yep, thanks for hanging in, guys.
All right,
yeah,
thank you. I know
everybody have a good night. Be safe on the water.
Yep. Thanks for having us. Thank you.
There we go. And on that note, see everybody later.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode here on Paddle and Fin. Be sure to drop a 5-star rating, a thumbs up, or smash that subscribe button on any platform you're listening in on. Be sure to check us out on Waypoint TV, waypointtv.com. Make sure you sign up for the Fantasy Kayak Fishing League at paddleandfin.com/fantasy. You could support this show through Patreon, patreon.com/paddleandfin. Don't forget to check out the website, paddleandfin.com. Catch us on YouTube. If you got a question, comment, or want to see a future guest on the show, be sure to email us at paddleandfin@gmail.com. Shout out to our show supporters, Yak Gadget. You can check out all the fine kayak accessories at yakgadget.com. Pelican Professional. For all your cases, coolers, and lighting needs, go to pelican.com. Rocktown Adventures, your Midwest premier paddle sports destination. Go to rocktownadventures.com. Eastport Marina, the beautiful destination on Dale Hollow Lake. If you're looking for lodging, kayaks, kayak accessories, or anything fishing related on the beautiful Dale Hollow Lake, go to eastport.info. And Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com and fill your tackle boxes today.